Hello everyone, it's taken us a while, but we really did want to bring you this full in-depth review of Fast Fusion on the Nintendo Switch 2 that also features the new DLC.
Yep, you've just had the pure DLC released for free, so we're going to include that into this review. And it's a series that's been going for a while on Nintendo consoles. It's nice seeing it be a launch game on the Switch 2.
Yep, it was developed by Shinen using their proprietary engine. So is it Zero to Hero or a total wipeout? Well, let's find out.
Let's start with the gameplay then, and it is of course a racing game, a futuristic racing game that you play at high speeds. You have a few different options in terms of what you can do when you go into the game. You have the championship mode, you have multiplayer options, you have a superhero mode and time attack, and we'll break all these down for you.
So the main mode you're going to be playing is the championship, which is split into different divisions that are essentially the difficulties but also the speed the game runs at.
Yep, you have subsonic, which is your easy mode, I suppose. You have the advanced, which is supersonic, and then you have a locked hypersonic mode, which is your expert mode.
Much like the previous entries in the series, you will have to time your button press right at the get-go to try and get your boost start, and it uses a shifting color mechanic whereby the boost pad relates to the color of your vehicle and you can switch that on the fly.
Yep, you'll be changing between blue and orange, and you do this by pressing the X button, and you'll also be collecting credits which act both as currency, and again we'll get onto this later, but also it fills your boost meter. And this is very important because not only does it serve the obvious purpose of allowing you to boost, but you'll have to use it at times more aggressively to smash into your opponents or save yourself from being smashed into, as if you are hit by someone that is boosting, you'll be knocked out of the race for a few seconds.
Yeah, the further you get into the game, it becomes a real essential mechanic to knock other players off the track. If you're going for that number one spot, as Glen says, you will have to use that boost offensively to do damage. And also timing your jumps at certain moments so that you could land on the other player's head and you can knock them out of their stride.
Yeah, there is a jump in this game, and we should go into that because, as well as Mark said, allowing you to hinder the opposition, you can also use it on certain parts of the tracks. Not necessarily for shortcuts, although this is a part of it, but there'll be boosts, say, just out of reach that you'll need to jump into that will allow you to make further progress and get ahead of the opposition.
The overall design of the tracks themselves is quite strong. As you progress, you'll notice small shortcuts, and when you move into those harder difficulties, the CPU opponents will start to utilize those, and that's really where you'll begin to learn some of the more difficult ones.
Yeah, of course, they are all suspended in the air, the tracks, and it almost feels like a game full of rainbow roads if you're more used to Mario Kart, where you can obviously fall off the tracks, or you can sometimes jump off at certain points and make huge shortcuts or get a huge advantage on the opposition.
The series obviously draws heavy inspiration from the likes of F-Zero and Wipeout, but it does have a unique feel with the combination of these mechanics, and we kind of have two views on the jump mechanic, don't we?
Yeah, it's nice to see some innovation in racing games. Not that jumps haven't been part of them before, but the way that you can use it both for shortcuts, boosts, or almost as a way of being aggressive in the race is good. I did feel at times though it was quite difficult when it became necessary to jump. So not when it was optional, when it part of the track itself meant you needed to jump. I didn't personally think it was as clear that this was coming, and it almost felt like a beginner's trap. Now there are arrows pointing upwards, and they're part of the scenery almost. They're like printed onto the wall of the track. I think just adding or having the option to add like an exclamation mark that flashed on the screen or something, just for people like me who's maybe their eyesight's not good enough to see it in advance, would have made for a more enjoyable experience at these times.
I totally agree. I think its signposting of some elements is just a little lacking. Other than that, it's a really solid racing experience that I think fans of any of the previously mentioned games are going to get right on board with. There's not a huge amount of negative to say. Now, outside of the championships, you'll be unlocking new championships using that currency that you've earned by ranking first, second or third, or collecting the coins as you move around the tracks. And then the next big mechanic rears its head, and that's the fusion of two of these different vehicles together.
Yeah, so you can, as Mark said, fuse certain vehicles together, and this will then give you a new hybrid vehicle with new stats, giving you a boost obviously in stats in doing so. And these are ranked, aren't they? So obviously the higher the ranking of the fusion, the better the vehicle that you'll get out of it will be. But you can defuse them, if that's the right term, for a small price to get your original vehicles back, and it will keep a log of all of the fusions that you've made. I think there were 210 in total.
Like 2.5, 2.10.
Something like that, wasn't it, that you could do? And it almost becomes like a collectathon in its own right.
Yeah, giving that element of randomness to the fusions is a really nice idea and keeps you going back, often just to see what visual changes that they'll produce.
So there is a multiplayer mode, as we mentioned. This is split screen, up to 4 players locally. There isn't an online option, unfortunately, although you can use the Switch 2's game share mode, which will allow someone that doesn't own the game to play with you, again, as long as you are local.
A brief note on game share: while it's not the developer here's fault, I think the way that Nintendo have implemented that, it means it's very internet dependent. So for example, the internet here in my office isn't great, and it essentially streams it to the other device. It also cuts down the visual quality, makes it quite blurry because of the bit rate of that feed, and it changes the proportions as well, so they just get the middle of the screen, which can look a little underwhelming.
So you have time attack as your basic time trial mode, but the other main one is superhero mode, and here there's a couple of new tweaks to the gameplay that we'll go over. So the first of those is that your boost bar now also becomes your shield. So using your boost will effectively diminish the defensive capabilities of your vehicle, something that's been seen before in games such as F-Zero. And I did like this mechanic. I like that this was implemented in this new mode, wasn't a part of the actual game mode. But the other part of it is that every time you crash in this superhero mode, you'll have to restart the race. I felt it was a shame that they added this with the boost slash shield, because I really like one of them and I don't like the other one at all, and they come as a package. A brief word on controls. We've mentioned bits of it as we've gone along. Aside from the switching of the colours, you have the jump, of course, as well. ZL and ZR will allow you to kind of shunt your vehicle left or right. And when you get into the game properly, you'll start to really use this to refine your positioning on the tracks. It does take some getting used to. I think the controls as a whole, they are, in terms of button placement, very logical, but it just takes a little while to get going with them.
It's nice that they have included motion controls, though. It's very often overlooked in most games, and having that for players, especially if they're on the easier leagues, is quite enjoyable.
Gameplay is definitely fun, and there are a few new tweaks here, not just to this series, but in terms of the racing genre as a whole, and it gets 18 out of 20. Controls, by the same token, do exactly what they need to do. They do take some getting used to, but they also score 18 out of 20.
Technically, Fast Fusion, like its predecessor on Switch 1, is a bit of a visual showcase. It looks and runs fantastic at 4K, high dynamic range, 60 frames per second, but it also shows a lot of effort in terms of the amount of options the developer have gone for. There are multiple different visual options, from quality to performance, and with this patch they included the new Pure mode, which is essentially, as the title suggests, a pure feed that doesn't use any digital upscaling to try and present a more consistent, crisp image at a slight detriment of resolution. So you may notice some aliasing, a little bit of jaggy on the edges, but it will be just crisper overall. It's a lot of effort, isn't it?
It is a lot of effort for a free update, and this is on top of the ones that were already in there, which was a quality mode, I think it was a high quality mode, and a performance mode. So you've certainly got options when it comes to how you want the game to look. When we move on to the aesthetic of the vehicles and the tracks, there is some nice variety here. It's obviously a futuristic racer, and you get use of some of the tropes of this almost subgenre, things like slowly spinning fans that you need to make your way through. You almost get like 8080s stomping their feet down, and I did get a bit of a Star Wars vibe from some of the locations. You had forests that reminded me of Return of the Jedi. There was a desert world as well. It's definitely something that evokes memories of other things as you're playing, whilst retaining its originality at the same time.
The car designs are nice. I think the Fusion option really keeps that alive by giving you that 200 plus different options in the way that they can be joined together. They are kind of as expected. There's not many surprises. A couple of the fusions with the spikes, I think, are nice touches.
The one thing I will say about the Fusion system is that you'll find at times that you'll make a car that you really like the look of, but its stats aren't great. And because you can't improve the stats of one car without fusing it with another, sometimes you have to sacrifice that aesthetic look to get a better car. It's just kind of peaks and troughs, isn't it, of that system?
Absolutely. The game does have HD rumble as well, quite nice implementation of. So it does have the full package, really, of what the Switch 2 can offer, and it runs well in handheld mode.
Let's move on to the audio then, and there are a number of different background songs and tunes as you're playing. There is a jukebox mode outside of the game itself that you can access, And I did enjoy it, the soundtrack. It's not overly memorable, which isn't a massive criticism. Not everything can be. But what I did like about it was how eclectic the mix of songs were. For example, there's one track, I think it was on one of the jungle tracks, where it's drum based. And then on the next one, it's very heavy metal or it's guitar based. So I did like the difference. I will say that perhaps comes at the expense of an overall theme or identity. But at the same time, I think it's a fair payoff.
Visuals and performance, score 19 out of 20. Sound and audio, score 16 out of 20.
Fast Fusion costs £13.49 and regional equivalents are on your screen now. Now in this section we're going to talk about the free DLC in a bit more detail and tell you exactly what it is you'll be getting. But before the DLC there were 12 individual tracks split into 4 different cups, and now you get 3 new tracks, making obviously 1 new cup. These tracks were all based on tracks from Fast RMX, which was the game on the original Switch, I believe, and they've kind of just made some tweaks to them to make them more accessible or applicable to this version, especially with that new jump option.
Yeah, in a day and age where prices are going through the roof, I think it was a really smart marketing decision to charge a lower price, to get more sales, to get good customer feelings, and then to release a free DLC this quickly after launch. That has to be praised.
Absolutely. Then you factor in the multiplayer mode, no online I guess you could argue, and the fusion aspect, which whilst it does lose its luster after a little while, it's nice to see it here, and I don't think there's really an argument against giving it the full 20 out of 20.
So there we have it, Fast Fusion, now with a new update. An incredibly enjoyable experience. Once again, Shinen Multimedia showing exactly what they do. Personally, I'd love to see a sequel to The Tourist, which was another of their great games. But this one is definitely worth picking up. Fast Fusion gets a SwitchUp score of 91%.
So there we have it, that's our review of Fast Fusion, including that new free DLC. What do you make of this one? Have you picked it up yet? Are you planning on doing so? Let us know in the comment section below. Don't forget, if you are looking for eShop credit to do just that, you can use our website, switchup.gg, to get your eShop cards, and doing so will get you 5% of your purchase price back as cash back. There's also a link down there to Play Asia if you're looking to import any games. Using our link and code will get you 5% off there too. Thanks to our patrons and our channel members for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, and until next time, happy gaming.